Well, Ed is going to talk to us about staying ahead of today's most dangerous attacks, evolution of attacker craft, and using capture the flags to stay sharp. Ed Skoudis, whom I've known for many years, is the founder of the SANS penetration testing curriculum and CounterHack. He's an established author. He also leads the teams that builds NetWars, Holiday Hack, and Cyber City. This dude is smart. His fun fact, he's an avid collector of antique crypto systems. I'm sure Ellie would be excited to hear about that. He has an Enigma machine, an A720, a rare, I'm not going to pronounce it right, I'll just say German crypto cipher machine from World War II, and a U.S. Army M94 crypto cylinder. Now that's pretty unique. All right, Ed, I'm going to hand it over to you. Tell us how to stay ahead of the most damaging cyber attacks.
Michelle, thank you. It is fantastic to see you again. It's also great to see all of the students here. I've got some great stuff I want to share with you. And Michelle, you're 100% right. It has been crazy times. I mean, since late last year and continuing into this year and advancing even further. So I'm going to go ahead and share my slides here for you. And there we go. I hope you can all see those. The presentation I'm about to share with you is actually bifurcated into two parts. The first section is going to focus on what we're seeing in the wild. I mean, some of the nasty stuff that's going on. Then the second half is some practical tips and advice that you can use to extend your skill set. I mean, you've done great with CyberStart, but what are some other CTFs and how can you embrace them so you can continue building your skill set and launching your career forward? If you have questions during the session, please type them into the question box. We're going to get to the questions and answers at the end. Michelle is going to read those questions just like she did before. But again, thank you for joining us. And I think, I think we're looking good. So the top 5 most dangerous new attacks and how you can use CTFs to prepare to defend. Michelle, thank you for your kind introduction. Let's roll. The first half of this presentation is actually fueled by ideas from me, but also other folks from the SANS Institute and related organizations. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a summary of a presentation that we do each year at the RSA conference. We've done it over the last several years. It is an RSA conference keynote. And normally we have about 8,000 people that attend this conference in the room and about 20,000 people that are following it on a stream. The whole presentation itself lasts about 35, 40 minutes. So they asked me to present to you a summary of the ideas in this presentation that are typically from Alan Paller, from me, from Heather Mahalik. Heather is the D4 curriculum lead with the SANS Institute. She's also the director of digital intelligence at Celebrate. Johannes Ulrich, he's the Dean of Research at the SANS Technology Institute. And Katie Nichols, absolutely brilliant. She's a certified instructor with the SANS Institute, and she's also director of intelligence with Red Canary. Now, the briefing I'm about to give you is not a replacement for that RSA conference talk. Instead, it's an exclusive analysis just for you. So we're going to start with what we call the top 5 most dangerous new attacks. And one of these ones that I went over, that's why it says Skoudis here, is undermining software integrity. This is truly a hard problem. There is a famous research paper that came out back in 1983 by Ken Thompson. It was a long, long time ago. But if you learn by reading papers, you might want to take a look at this paper. It's only 3 pages long. But in this paper, Ken Thompson talks about how difficult it is to be able to trust software. And he talks about creating an evil, malicious compiler in this paper. And then he talks about how you could take this malicious compiler and whatever it compiles will itself be evil. You can then take the source code for a good compiler, compile it with a malicious compiler, so that anything that the new compiled compiler compiles will itself be malicious. Then you can throw the source code for your malicious compiler away because somebody's still going to have to use this new compiled version of the compiler. So if anybody compiles a new compiler with it, it's evil. It's kind of an inception problem, right? Chicken versus the egg, really a difficult issue. And if anything, it's gotten even worse since 1983. You see, our software distribution models are optimized for speed, right? Updating things through apt get update and so forth are just so simple, but very dangerous because your machine is pulling software down from all these different sites on the internet. Can they be trustworthy? And we talk a lot now in cybersecurity about zero trust architectures. You know, if you go back, I don't know, 5 or 10 years, there was this idea of a firewall, and you'd have a trusted zone on one side of the firewall and an untrusted zone on the other side. And the reason this doesn't work so well is because the attackers are able to hack their way into the trusted zone, and then you can't be trusted anymore. So zero trust is where we say every device, every user, every transaction, every system has to be authenticated and authorized before we will allow it to engage in our environment. Zero trust. Now, here's the problem. Zero trust is great conceptually, intellectually, it's very nice, but how do you update the software that is implementing your zero trust? Well, you're often just going to various software update sites and pulling down the latest software and in an automated fashion, patching everything. And patches help. But if somebody gets into your patch distribution system, you've got some big problems. And in fact, we've had some recent major concerns with this. Back in December of 2020, gosh, it seemed like so long ago. It was 7 months, 8 months ago. There was the big SolarWinds attack, where it was alleged that folks behind a nation state adversary, it's been talked about how it may or may not have been Russia, were able to undermine this company, SolarWinds, that distributed software for managing infrastructures, and thousands of organizations got hit with that, with a very, very powerful and deep piece of malicious code. And then, as Michelle pointed out earlier, just last week, we had this huge issue with Kaseya, and their infrastructure, which is being, their software is being used by managed service providers to provide service around the world. So this got pushed, and at least 70 or so organizations got hit with ransomware in this, but the number seems to be going up as new people report on it. So that was just last week. There was also a great white paper, another one, this one's a little bit long, it's about 14 pages long. You might want to jot this down because it's a very interesting read, and I love the title. It's called Backstabber's Knife Collection, a review of open source software supply chain attacks. So in this paper, they go over a dozen different ways that attackers can undermine open source software by submitting malicious code as part of input or update, or by undermining libraries and dependencies. In fact, there's another article that came out called Dependency Confusion. And in this attack, someone posted various modules in Node, Python, and Ruby that had a name collision with internal modules that were created by Apple, Microsoft, and dozens of other companies, including Uber. So see, the idea is occasionally the name of a dependency of Ruby or Node or Python inside an organization leaks out. It leaks out maybe in some of their code, or something leaks out. So this guy, he looked for the names of some of the internal packages these organizations were using, and then he created some malware. It wasn't super evil malware. If it ran on your system, it would just send a DNS request to him, so you knew that he knew that it ran. So he created this malware, gave it the same name as the internal dependency, and some of these packages by default will actually defer to public repositories for a named dependency over an internal or even local repository. Scary stuff. And we see vulnerabilities from open source libraries propagating into other offerings. This is bad news. So software integrity, how can you trust the software you're getting? Here's what organizations are doing. First off, you need to maintain a software inventory. If you don't know what you're running, you can't defend what you have. Software inventory is critical. In fact, the Center for Internet Security has its controls. They used to be called the critical controls, but now they're CIS controls. Control number one is having an asset inventory. Important. Control number two is having a software inventory. But a software inventory will just show you a set of the software packages that you're using. It's good, but it doesn't go far enough, because what about all of the dependencies inside there, all the libraries that they're dependent on? For this, organizations are increasingly turning to what's called a software bill of materials. You need to demand, or we need to increasingly demand as an industry, a software bill of materials from our vendors. See, if you look at a software inventory is kind of like a menu when you go to a restaurant. A software bill of materials is like the ingredients of what's inside each of those things on the menu. So that way, we shed some sunlight on this, and we can see if there's some real problems. We can determine that this particular closed source package, commercial tool, might have some open source software in it that was never patched or fixed. So we need to demand that. Another thing that I'm really getting into lately over the last maybe 8 months or so is threat hunting. Threat hunting is really cool stuff. You see, normally we deploy in our environment various intrusion detection systems, log analysis tools, security information or security event management tools, SIM and SEM tools, but they only go so far. These are automated tools that do correlation and analysis and so forth to try to see if attackers are in our midst. But they're entirely automated. And sometimes they miss something, especially for a sophisticated attacker like the one from SolarWinds or some of the latest ransomware attacks. A very sophisticated attacker might fly under the radar screen of these burglar alarms. I think of the intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, and log analysis as burglar alarms. So what we can do is we can apply very smart humans in threat hunting to augment our burglar alarms. I encourage you folks to start looking into threat hunting because it's exploding right now as a great career field. The thought is that organizations that really care about their security need to periodically and regularly deploy threat hunters so that they can analyze systems that may have succumbed to attack and look for the subtle attackers that are on it. We see a lot of big organizations moving to this. We see a lot of managed security service providers moving to doing threat hunting, and it's paying off. And then finally, so the threat hunters are essentially like the detectives. We got burglar alarms, that's good. We also have detectives to augment them. And then finally, purple team exercises. In a purple team exercise, that's where you have the red team doing offense, the blue team doing detection analysis and trying to expel the red team. Now, there's no purple team itself. The purple team consists of the red working with the blue so that red can sharpen blue and make them better. But there's a feedback loop here, a very positive one. Blue can also sharpen red. And you can establish some metrics around this so that you can determine, is blue detecting red faster and eradicating them more quickly in the environment? And if so, red can up its game. Is red getting deep into the environment and successfully pivoting within the environment? If so, blue's got to up its game. And then they can communicate through this purple team exercise. It's great stuff. Next, let's talk about Heather Mahalik's set of the latest, most dangerous attacks. I told you there's 5 different attacks. I covered software integrity. Heather's covering 2 of them: improper session handling and also an issue with cryptography. So we have some good news to start Heather's point. Single sign-on and multi-factor authentication are proliferating. That's great, using things like phones and tablets and so forth. Now, this is often handled through granting a token. So in step 1 here, we have a user sends a request to a single sign-on system. It might send a text message via SMS to a phone, and then the user receives that, types it in, and sends it back to the SSO system, single sign-on, and gets a token. The token might be in the form of a cookie or some other element. They can then use that in step 3 to access corporate email, cloud storage, repositories, or maybe even like a teaming environment for shared video and audio and chat and such. This is good. It's better than where we were before. Unfortunately, though, extra confidence in this authentication, they're thinking the authentication is happening better, it's multi-factor, results in less authorization checks. Like, are you allowed to do this? I know who you are, but am I really checking to see if you have allowed access to these different environments? And what's more, if an attacker steals one of these tokens, maybe due to a vulnerability in a mobile app or in the user's browser or the web application implementing any one of these elements on the right-hand side, the user's sessions can be hijacked and the attacker can impersonate that user. So while this is a better world than it was 5 years ago, we still have a long way to go to drain the swamp of these vulnerabilities. Heather's other point is, as we increase the tempo for continuous integration and continuous deployment of software, sometimes developers get in this loop and are moving so fast through agile and scrums and sprints that they don't carefully implement their security, especially security associated with the use of cryptography, either the misuse of APIs or the implementation of their own crypto algorithms, which is a very scary and dangerous thing. And then these two come together. So your crypto might have flaws in it, and also those flaws might be in association with how you generate session tokens. When those two come together, we got a big problem. So Heather's advice for what organizations can do. Well, developers should insist on DevOps-Sec. What I mean by that is there's development, there's operations, and a lot of people are focused on DevOps. Let's develop the code so it can be operated better. Let's make sure operations are reflected in when we do our development, and let's try to automate. That's great, but you have to add security into that, or else you're optimizing around this very fast feedback loop that doesn't have security. Also, prohibit developers from creating their own custom crypto. This can be interesting as an experiment, but good crypto libraries require rigorous, detailed analysis and testing. Also, for your tokens that are authenticating people to, say, your web application or your mobile application, make sure you time out those tokens after a certain period of non-use. For the security team, we need to penetration test applications and single sign-on and crypto. And also review the permissions that your app needs as it runs on, say, a mobile device, whether it's Android or iOS or other. We also want to educate users, people like you, people like me, people like the rest of the folks in our organization. We need to educate users so that when they're done using an app, they actually log off. Now, this can be hard to do every single time, but I try to remind myself even, hey, I am done using my mobile banking app, or I am done using this particular corporate app. Log off of that so the session token is invalidated. And if it's somehow harvested or gathered in another way, it can't be used. All right, so that was Heather Mahalik. Next, we get to Johannes Ulrich. What is he particularly worried about? He's worried about using or undermining machine learning for malware detection. You know, we have malware detection. You run an endpoint security suite, maybe an antivirus tool, whatever it is. And the old approach was you'd have signatures that would look at the code that's running on the system and say, this one's malicious, it's evil. And the signatures could have been whole files, or maybe even hashes of whole files, or even little piece parts of the potentially malicious file. The approach worked for about 20 years or so. The newer approach is to augment the signature matching with machine learning algorithms that have samples of good and samples of bad. So therefore, we can train up the neural networks of machine learning to say, hey, this is what evil looks like. It's a great idea and concept. But the problem is, where do you get the evil stuff from? Well, actual malware. You want to train it on real world malware. And attackers are providing that malware in their attacks. But what if attackers were to create malware that was actually designed to subvert the machine language malware detection? That is, they kind of fly a false flag operation. They submit malware in that looks nothing like what the actual malware they're going to use, so that the ML algorithms are focused on, well, not the real threat. That's nasty stuff. That's what Johannes is taking a look at and worried about. So what can organizations do with this? First, recognize that machine learning and artificial intelligence, while a powerful technology, they're not a panacea. They can be undermined, and you got to make sure you're getting your data set from a reliable source that isn't poisoned. You know, asking vendors, how do you use ML? What is your strategy for ML and even more generally artificial intelligence to detect malicious activity? And how are you training these algorithms? And how are you armoring that training mechanism to make sure it can't be subverted to undermine your own product? All right, so let's see. We saw one of these by me, software integrity. We saw two by Heather Mahalik, concerns about session handling and concerns about crypto. We saw Johannes have his concerns about machine learning. We finish up this section of the presentation with Katie Nichols, and she focused on ransomware evolution. Ransomware is the big story these days. You've seen it again and again, the meat packing, the colonial pipeline, all the stuff that's going on. It's in banking, it's in hospitals, it's bad, bad news. Now, ransomware used to be focused as an attack on availability. That is, you can't get your data. So how do you stay in business when you can't get your data? Well, dozens of recent ransomware attacks have not just been an attack against availability. That's part of it. That's what gets your attention if you're a business runner, right? But there are also attacks against confidentiality. The attackers are stealing the data. There is an exfiltration event these days. So they'll steal the data, they'll encrypt it on your system, and then they say, you want your data back, you got to give us money. Oh, and if you don't give us money, we're going to release the data publicly. So it's an attack against availability and confidentiality. And FYI, it's also increasingly an attack against integrity, because the attackers can just destroy the data. Or oftentimes, I saw some statistics posted, it says 20 to 40% of the time, organizations, even if they pay the ransom, can't get back all their data. And the reason I say it's 20 to 40% of the time, because it seems that there's a difference whether you're a commercial company paying a ransom or an individual paying it because somebody encrypted all of your photos and personal data. It's the new norm for ransomware to go after confidentiality and availability and maybe a little integrity. So what can you do with this? We used to say, make sure you have offline backups, and that helps. It goes a long way. But additionally, we're saying limit file sharing and enforce access control across enterprise networks. Enterprise networks today are often pretty open when it comes to file sharing. I'm talking like Windows file sharing via the server message block protocol, SMB. We need to limit that where we can. Obviously, people need to get access to file servers, but we need to enforce access control. Also, during a ransomware incident, remember the attacker is not necessarily negotiating in good faith. You should assume exfiltration has occurred and then clean up thoroughly, because they will likely be back. Really nasty stuff. And if you do opt to negotiate, realize they might lie to you. This is a whole new world of ransomware. And I worry about this one. I worry that it could cause an international incident. When one of these ransomware cases happen, there are all kinds of allegations in the press about what countries are behind it. And you'll notice that the US is very careful about assigning blame to specific countries. At least we have been recently, because I think we don't want to touch off an international incident. That said, we do want to push on diplomatic and maybe even economic models to try to stop this, because my worry is at some point, somebody's going to do a ransomware attack and inadvertently kill people. Maybe because of an attack against a hospital, maybe because of an attack against some physical infrastructure that causes significant damage. And then we will have a truly messy international incident on our hands. This one's a big worry, and I'm glad Katie Nichols brought it up. So the world is a scary and kind of crazy place. So I wanted to share with you a couple of tips for you on how you can use capture the flag events to prepare to defend. CyberStart is a great start. That's why it's called CyberStart. But how can you continue to practice and build your skills? I've got a couple of tips here, and then places where you can go for fantastic CTFs that you can play. So first, do this regularly. Maybe make a weekly date with yourself to go on a cyber range or a CTF, maybe twice a week for 2 hours each day. Just some hands-on stuff. I'm not saying every day, but I know you're busy with your studies. Some of you are busy with your jobs, but I think setting aside at least 2 hours a week, or better yet, 4 hours a week if you can, and think of it as an investment in yourself and stick with it. Put it on your calendar. Next, using these CTFs, which I'm about to recommend specific ones for you, keep focused on learning, not winning. Now, I recognize saying this to you, you guys have all done incredible stuff in the CyberStart game, and you're winners. I mean, you're fantastic. But don't let winning cause you to lose sight of learning, okay? This is especially important when you're starting out, but you folks have a lot of capabilities under your belt. But focus on building skills. That's your big win. Think about what you're achieving as you work your way through these incredible games. Next, this one is an interesting one about mindset. I mean, me and my team, we design capture the flags and cyber ranges for all kinds of organizations, for all age levels. We do the holiday hack challenge. That's my team that does that. And I've noticed a very interesting divergence of mindset when people play a CTF. Some people, because they know this is part of a CTF, will actually be more inspired and more focused to try to conquer what seems impossible. I've even had people say to me, Ed, you put this in a CTF, so I know it's doable, and therefore I'm going to do it. That's great. But I sometimes see the opposite mindset, where somebody says, I know this is doable because Ed would not have put it in a CTF unless it was doable. I can't do it, therefore I'm terrible, and they shut down and they don't move forward. They get frustrated. My advice to you is try to stay above and beyond your frustration. Yes, I know it can get frustrating. Believe me, I do these things myself. I play CTFs and sometimes I get frustrated, but I just remind myself, focus on the learning and move on to other challenges. So what CTFs are available for you? You might want to take some notes on this or a screenshot or something like that, because there's some really great ones out there. Now, many CTFs are bound in time. They might run over a weekend, or they might run over, say, 3 days or even a week. Others are open all the time, around the clock. In fact, sometimes people call these war games. War games, there's a Wikipedia page on it. One of the best places to get information about the periodic and short time CTFs, as well as the longer term ones that run continuously forever, is CTF Time, ctftime.org. They maintain an inventory of all these different CTFs that you can go to. And there's another inventory called WeChal. It's at wechow.net. They have over 102 active CTF sites here. And then they rank them. They're kind of crowdsource ranked. So, you can see how many people enjoyed this. Was it fun? They come in different languages, English, French. There's some Russian ones, Chinese ones, all kinds of things. And it ranks individual difficulty and enjoyment. And then there's some categories you can see up at the top, like crypto or exploit or math or lockpicking. That's kind of cool. One of my favorite categories here, see where it says storyline? I like to work on these challenges where there's a storyline because it makes it more interesting, more realistic. It helps things move forward in my own brain. I like the storyline ones. All right, so those were inventories of them, CTF Time and WeChat. Now let's zoom into some specific ones. And maybe some of you have played these before. There's a really good source for these called overthewire.org. They have 16 different games here. A lot of it is secure shell based or various shell challenges, but they're very good, high quality stuff. And they have this initial game called Bandit. And if you've never played a CTF outside of CyberStart, you might want to look at Bandit. It's a very good introduction to it, so you can kind of see the mechanics of how these work. They also do chat support via Discord and IRC. Over the Wire is doing some great stuff. All right. So other tips on what you can do here. Level up by teaming up. I mean, you've made some friends. I see you guys chatting in the chat here. You obviously are getting to know each other, which is great as being part of this program and going through the academy now. Fantastic. So you can work with a friend, maybe somebody from your office or local community. I saw the great recommendation earlier from John about going to B-sides because they're local and distributed around the world, actually, not just the country, but all over the world. So that's good. Or maybe it's someplace where you took a class. Work with a friend because that will help inspire you. But you might say, well, I'd like a larger team, or I don't have many friends, so what could I do? There is a team called Open to All. Open to All is a team of teams that play CTFs all the time. And there's over 300 members in Open to All. You go to opentoallctf.github.io. And almost any CTF that's coming up, they will have a team of maybe 5 or 10 or 18 people that can play together, or you can even divide up into sub-teams. And they have one really important rule: be respectful to your teammates. I'm so glad this is available to people who want to meet people, but maybe are a little more on the introverted side. Or even if you're an extrovert, you can join Open to All, but it is nice because its name literally applies, Open to All. Oh, and I got one more for you. I already alluded to it a little bit, but we need to get into this now. How can you use CTFs to defend the 2020 Holiday Hack Challenge? Now, you might say, well, it's 2021. Yes, we're working on that. But my team spends thousands of hours every year on the Holiday Hack Challenge, and we try to build the highest quality challenges we can. The idea is a holiday supervillain is trying to destroy the whole holiday season in December. And you have to do analysis, investigation to help Santa Claus and the elves thwart that holiday supervillain and bring them to justice. We've been doing Holiday Hack Challenges for 18 years now, and we try to make everyone we do the best one ever. And here's something a lot of people don't know. We keep all of the Holiday Hack Challenges online and ready to go for you. So you could play Holiday Hack Challenge 2015 or 2016 or 2020 or 2021 or 2017 or 2018, whatever you'd like. They're all there for you. Now, in the 2020 Holiday Hack Challenge, which is up right now, you can go to holidayhackchallenge.com. You can go into this challenge. It's a little video game. So you're hopping around with your avatar in the video game. You're interacting with elves. There are other characters that are giving you hints and such. And there's a custom soundtrack. We released a soundtrack of music that I commission. We also have that music streaming on all the streaming services. So Spotify, Apple Music, it's on all the streaming services. And then Holiday Hack 2020, Jack Frost is there. He is the holiday supervillain that you have to thwart. And as you're thwarting Jack Frost, there's a certain point in the game where you become Santa Claus. And only with Santa's capabilities and access within the environment, like his fingerprint or thumbprint, can you get deep enough so that you can extinguish what Jack Frost is doing. So that's the Holiday Hack 2020. So how can you prepare for Holiday Hack 2021? It's coming the first week of December this year. Get ready for it. What you can do is you can play last year's 2020 or 2019 or 2018. We pay to keep these things up so they become a perpetual cyber range that if you just want some laughs, you want some fun, because we've got a fun storyline associated with each one of these, you can play those. There's lots of great stuff for you to learn. You'll also learn the game dynamics. You also might meet some friends that you can work with here, and you could start practicing with your team. Again, it's holidayhackchallenge.com. Yeah, John Hammond is there. I see that in the chat. John Hammond is there. Every year he does an amazing video series on how he solved Holiday Hack Challenge. These are some just fantastic friends at our Holiday Hack party. So in conclusion, attackers are more capable and malicious than ever before. Just when I think it can't get any worse, it does. It is unbelievable. Their tactics are shifting. I mean, you saw the information from Heather Mahalik and Johannes Ulrich and Katie Nichols and me and Alan Paller. They're better funded than they ever were before. Ransomware is generating more and more money for them, and some of that money goes into research and development of even worse ransomware. But we can successfully defend our organizations. We need to be diligent. We need people like you to help us make this world a safer, more secure place. We need to implement sound and up-to-date security practices. And one of the great ways you can keep yourself well-skilled through the academy, through things like CyberStart, but is also various other cyber ranges and CTFs. They have huge opportunities for you. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And we'd like to open it up to questions. Michelle, are you ready? You want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, of course I'm ready, Ed. Wow, that was a lot of detail to get through in those few minutes, but totally
There's a lot
awesome.
of stuff there, yeah.
Yeah, Ed, you guys, you don't know what a treat this is. Like, Ed is a super rock star luminary in the industry. And one way to learn is to start mastering, if you can, some of the things that he creates. Hey, I don't know if this is possible, Ed, but I don't know, no need, it might be. Someone is asking, like, can you show us the Enigma machine? Or something?
I don't have it handy right now.
Yeah.
I do have another crypto system that I can get for you, though. That's really cool.
Okay.
Can I get that for you?
Yeah, let's see real quick. Okay. And while he's grabbing that, we have a few questions to start. What do you got? Okay. Ooh.
This is an M94. So this was used by, yeah, it's small. This was used by the US Army from 1917 up to 1945. A lot of stuff happened between 1917 and 1945. But the idea here is it's a cylinder disk cipher. There's 25 little disks and it turns. And the key is the order of the disks. So today's key might be disk number 4, disk number 8, disk number 17, disk number 22, and you would dial in a little message, and then you turn it, and it's just got a pseudo-random distribution of the alphabet on each one of these little disks, and you would just transmit that message. So it's a cipher disk from the US Army. Another very interesting property of this that was used by the soldiers back in those days is, in addition to encrypting and decrypting messages, a soldier could put this in his sock, swing it above the head, and then crack an adversary's skull with it, which you cannot do with an Enigma machine. The Enigma machines are 26 pounds. They're really inconvenient to carry around. So this was actually nice. And this, I mean, measurably has some really solid cryptographic properties. Wow. Here's a couple of other things I've got. These are from a Russian crypto system. Here, if you look, I don't know if you can see it's in focus, but there's Cyrillic around the edge. So yeah, so it's called Fialka. That's pretty cool. These are rotor wheels from a Fialka. So yeah, I got all kinds of little stuff around here, but the Enigma machine's not here with me right now. Sorry to say. Okay, no, that's cool. So we do have a couple questions, sure. and we have time for questions. So what is this is a good one. I'm asking you because I know you work with a lot of companies and you'll have a viewpoint on this. It was asked by Justin, one of our speakers coming up later this week. So what is your take on the pervasive lack of visibility across companies' environments? I mean, strong tools, like we just never seem to have enough visibility. Forget visibility. Let's talk about monitoring and observability. You know, what can they do? Like boards are trying to enforce, like they're trying to figure out what we cannot see. So what is your advice for these companies? So we need to both automate and have the human factor there. You know, SIMs and SEMs go a long way, but they're expensive and complex. Intrusion detection, intrusion prevention systems help a lot. Just keeping an eye on the logs and how many logs are we getting. Another thing that gives you some great visibility is looking at data flows, right? So we need to just start instrumenting around each one of those things. Look, SIMs and SEMs are so expensive to deploy and to tune right. But that said, if you're a large organization, you probably should be doing that just as part of your due diligence. For smaller organizations, relying on MSSPs to do the kinds of things we're talking about. And then the big thing, threat hunting. Threat hunting will see where other things miss. And it used to be, I got to say, penetration testing was kind of like the kind of big, fun, sexy thing to do in this industry. Increasingly, it's becoming threat hunting as the big, fun, sexy thing to do. And you can make such great finds in threat hunting that I would like to encourage each one of you. And you see it trickling down from the bigger companies and the bigger government organizations now to mid-sized companies. And just like it used to be, maybe a company would get one pen test every other year, and then a pen test every year, and then a pen test every quarter. Now it's threat hunting, maybe once per year and then twice per year. So there's a lot of career growth opportunity here. So it's a long-winded way of saying organizations can do better, and they can through tooling up, but also employing that human factor in the threat hunters.
Awesome, thank you. Here's another question. It was from earlier, but I think you'll actually probably have an answer for this one.
Sure.
So with more and more applications becoming client server related, will the newer CFTs and things that you create perhaps start covering more advanced techniques such as code caving, especially given the ability to code cave around WinSock, send, receive before encryption, decryption happens? I don't even know what all that means. But I'm sure
yes.
you do.
So, we're constantly putting new stuff out there, but we do want to achieve a wide audience. So if you look at the Holiday Hack Challenge, for example, of what we do, usually there's 12 challenges, and they start really simple so that little kids can do them. But they work their way up to sometimes outright writing an exploit or doing things like code caving, so you can figure out an area in memory where you can put your maliciousness and so forth. So yes, if you look at the one we did last year, it was an attack by Jack Frost against blockchain. And it was pretty sophisticated attack that Jack Frost pulled off, and you had to figure out how he did it. It was due to some improper use of pseudo-random number generators, as well as some very interesting abuse of hash collisions. So that's in Holiday Hack Challenge 2020, if you want to get into that. In our other offerings like Net Wars and such, we do put that. The thing of it is, those advanced challenges, which I'm glad that you're interested in that, we tend to try to reach a wide audience. So we go from the simple and ramp it all the way up to the very hard and very new. Santa Claus is looking at some really interesting new stuff this year. I wish I could tell you about it. It's very cutting edge technology, but it takes us much longer to write the very advanced stuff at the quality we want to do it as to write the easy stuff. So we actually spend a lot more time on the more advanced stuff. And you might say, yeah, but of the 12 challenges, only 3 of them were very advanced. Yes, and that probably took us more time than the other 9, because that's just kind of the way it goes. But we do want to put something out there for everyone. And not everybody's like that. There are other challenges. If you go to WeChal or Over the Wire, they have some very advanced challenges there too. So I'm with you. I want to have a panoply of challenges at all different levels.
All right, cool.
Don't overlook what you might learn from what might be a simpler challenge. You can learn some very practical stuff from that.
Yeah. So aligned with that, there's a similar question, because earlier, well, actually it was you too, and I think Rob to a certain extent, they were talking about industrial control systems. Are there any cyber ranges that are focused specifically on industrial control systems?
There are commercial ones, most definitely. I mean, the equipment, costs a fair amount of money and such, and is usually not virtualized. We have versions of Net Wars, for example. We have one called the Cookie Factory, and it's a manufacturing facility that actually makes cookies. You can smell them in the room because we actually have ovens that make the cookies, and your job is to keep those ovens running. Oh, and let me do this here. I have a Morse code key in the office, and whenever I tweet, it starts typing out whatever I tweet in Morse code. So,
oh, wow.
So anyway, so we have that. We also have one that is a power grid version of Net Wars. If there's a person, let me put this, I guess I'll put it in the chat. Aman Hardikar has created a whole list of different ranges and challenges and such. It's a mind map. if you do a search for Aman Hardikar and mind map, oh, you can't see what I type in? Oh, it's because I'm sending it to panelists. How do I send it to everyone? Here we go.
Well, someone can, one of our panelists might be able to type it in for the audience.
Aman Hardikar and mind map. If you search for that, he does have one on there. I haven't played it yet, but it's on industrial control systems. And he's got some stuff on there on IoT. So he's got this big mind map. It's the size of a poster. And he's got all these different CTFs and different places you can go to learn. I tried to boil that down into something that would fit into the size of the talk for this. But he does have some stuff on there. I recommend you check it out.
Awesome.
Oh, good. Vishnu posted that. Thank you. And I see. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, do you see some questions? I was gonna look for one more. We had a little bunch here I'm going off.
Please do. I see the question about, do you prefer Mac OS or Windows for cyber?
No, I was gonna ask, like, I think I know the answer to that, but what would you like, as your expert, what do you prefer?
So here's the deal. I like Mac OS as the elegant base for my computing experience. But if you want to do cybersecurity, you're going to need to know Windows and Linux. Because they're going to come up. They're just inevitable. So I do that all via VMs. I think I have a couple of laptops around that have actual Windows and actual Linux on it. But I use Mac OS 10 just, again, because I like the elegance of the computing experience. And then virtual machines on top of that. Don't overlook those Windows skills, especially, Active Directory in the cloud increasingly. Those are important skills to have.
Awesome. Well, Ed, it's been a pleasure. I just love listening to you. And the last time I saw you was on whatever floor that was at the RSA conference.
I
We were
remember.
all across San Francisco.
Yeah.
It was great to connect. Awesome advice for the young adults here and the future cyber professionals. And thank you so much, Ed.
It was an honor. Thank you. And I wish you all the best. You guys are doing incredible work. It's great stuff.